The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the distant hills, casting an orange glow over the quiet town. Everything seemed to be in its place. People wrapping up their workdays, children playing on the sidewalks, and the soft rustle of leaves in the warm evening breeze. It was one of those ordinary days when nothing seemed out of the ordinary. At least, not for most of the people who lived here. But for one man, today was about to change in a way he never could have imagined. David Thompson was a man of routine, a mid-level office worker in a small tech company. His life was one of simplicity and structure. Every morning he left his small house on the edge of town, walked the same route to work, and did the same tasks day after day. It wasn't exciting, but it was comfortable. He had no need for anything more. His friends were few and his social life even fewer, yet he never complained. There was peace in the simplicity, and that suited him just fine. On his walk home that evening, David took his usual path through the quiet streets. It was a path he'd walked countless times before, with little more than the sounds of his footsteps and the occasional car passing by. But today, something felt different. It wasn't just the way the wind had shifted, or how the sun seemed to linger just a little longer before dipping below the horizon. It was something else entirely, something he couldn't put his finger on. As he walked past the park, he saw her. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow playing with his vision. But when he blinked and looked again, she was still there, standing in the middle of the path, as if waiting for him. She was unlike anyone David had ever seen. Her skin shimmered with a pale, almost translucent hue, as if her very being was made of something otherworldly. Her hair was long and silver, cascading down her back in a way that looked almost unnatural. Her eyes, wide and luminous, seemed to glow with an inner light that both fascinated and frightened him. She wore a simple yet elegant garment that flowed around her as though it were alive, moving gently with the wind. But what truly stood out about her was the sense of serenity she exuded, even in the strange and unfamiliar surroundings. David stopped in his tracks. His heart raced, but he couldn't move. He stood there, staring at her, unsure of what to do. She was beautiful, but there was something about her presence that sent a shiver down his spine. It was as if she didn't belong here, like she had stepped out of a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. For a moment, neither of them spoke. David didn't know what to say, and she didn't seem to expect anything from him. The silence stretched out, thick and uncomfortable, before she finally broke it. "Help me," she said, her voice soft but clear. It was the kind of voice that seemed to echo, though she hadn't raised it. David blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "Excuse me? Please?" she repeated, taking a small step forward. "I need your help." David swallowed hard, still standing frozen on the sidewalk. He could feel his pulse pounding in his ears, his legs threatening to buckle beneath him. His mind was racing. Was this some kind of joke? Was she real? Should he run? Should he call the police? But something about her, something in her eyes, told him that she wasn't dangerous. At least, not in the way he had feared. There was no malice in her gaze, only a kind of quiet desperation. And maybe that was what did it, the fact that she looked so lost, so out of place, standing there in the fading light of day. "Where did you come from?" he asked, his voice hoarse, almost unwilling to believe his own words. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked around, as if trying to find something, or someone, that wasn't there. Her gaze flitted across the park, the streets, the trees. "I don't know," she said finally. "I don't know where I am." But he felt the weight of her words. She didn't seem like a prankster or a performer looking for attention. She was genuinely lost, and somehow, despite every instinct in his body telling him to be cautious, to be afraid, David felt an overwhelming sense of compassion for her. Are you okay? He asked, his voice softer now, the uncertainty still there but beginning to fade. Do you need help? Maybe I can get you to the police, or… No, she interrupted gently. I cannot go back there. Her voice faltered slightly, and for the first time David saw a crack in her calm exterior. She was afraid. David stepped forward, a little hesitant. What's going on? Who are you? She took another step closer, her eyes locking with his. I am from far away, from a place where you would not understand. But She stopped herself, searching for the right words. I have left.
I do not belong there anymore.
David's mind spun, trying to process what she was saying. Far away? A place he wouldn't understand? Was she talking about another country? Another city? But her eyes, the way she spoke, everything about her made it clear that she was not just from another place, but from another world. You're not from here, he whispered almost. She nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. I am not. David's heart skipped a beat. The thought seemed absurd, yet there was a certainty in her voice that made him question everything he thought he knew. He had heard stories, seen movies, read books. Aliens, creatures from other worlds. But this was real. She was real, and she was standing right in front of him. David opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could he say? What could he possibly say to someone, or something, like her? And yet, there was a part of him that wanted to help her, wanted to protect her, even though he didn't understand why. What do you need? He finally asked, his voice steadying. I need to rest, she said quietly. I need a place to stay just for a while. I will not be here long, but I must be here for now. David hesitated, still processing her words, the gravity of the situation settling on him like a heavy weight. This was insane, right? He didn't even know who she was, let alone where she came from. But the look in her eyes, the trust she seemed to place in him, was enough to sway him. Against all reason, he felt a pull, an unspoken bond, urging him to say yes. Okay, he said finally. You can come with me. I'll help you. The alien girl nodded, relief flooding her features. But there was something else there, too, a quiet sadness, an understanding that whatever had brought her to Earth, whatever had led her here, was far beyond the understanding of this man, this kind human who had simply stopped and offered a hand. And so, without another word, they began the walk to his home, a walk that would change both of their lives forever. Little did David know, this simple act of kindness would lead him down a path he never could have imagined. The night stretched on as the two figures walked side by side, the alien girl following the man all the way home. The sky above them was clear, the stars shining like diamonds in the vast, endless universe. The world, for that brief moment, seemed as if it had stopped, waiting for the next chapter of their story to begin. David led her to his small home at the edge of town. The evening had deepened, the shadows growing longer as they walked, and the stars above twinkled with the quiet certainty that life in the universe continued, whether he understood it or not. He was still trying to process everything. The strange woman who had appeared out of nowhere, the way she spoke with that odd, distant accent, and her otherworldly appearance. Nothing about this made sense. Yet, somehow, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had to help her. His home, a small, modest two-bedroom cottage with a garden in the back, sat quietly in the midst of the dimming town. He had always liked the isolation. It was comfortable. It was predictable. It was everything he needed. But tonight, everything was different. The woman, this alien girl, had been silent as they walked. She had not asked about anything more, nor did she give any further explanations. David had the overwhelming sense that she was lost in her own thoughts, her mind far from here. He could almost see it in the way she held herself, perfectly composed, but with a distant look in her eyes, as if she was seeing something no one else could. He opened the door and stepped inside first, holding it open for her. She looked at him, her luminous eyes reflecting a quiet gratitude as she stepped over the threshold into his home. It was small but warm, with wooden floors and a comfortable, if somewhat worn, couch in the living room. There was a simple kitchen beyond it, and a small hallway leading to the bedrooms. The place was lived in. David liked things neat, but not perfect. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, especially not now. "Please, make yourself comfortable," he said awkwardly, unsure of what to do next.
"I'll get you something to drink."
His mind raced with questions he didn't know how to ask. The alien girl nodded, standing still for a moment, surveying the room. She seemed to be taking everything in, her head slightly tilted, as though she were observing the human world for the first time. It was strange to watch her, knowing that she wasn't from here. Wasn't even from this planet. David went into the kitchen, opening the fridge and pulling out a bottle of water. He poured some into a glass and walked back into the living room, where she had settled herself on the couch, her posture straight, her eyes unfocused. She seemed to be deep in thought, but David couldn't tell if it was worry, curiosity, or something else entirely. He handed her the glass of water. "Here," he said. She accepted it without a word, her fingers brushing his for a moment as she took the glass. There was a strange electricity in the touch, something that made his heart skip a beat. She drank the water slowly, and when she was finished, she set the glass down on the coffee table with care. "Thank you," she said softly. David nodded, still feeling unsure of how to proceed. He had 1,000 questions, but where did he start? Why was she here? How did she end up on Earth? And what was it she had said about not belonging where she came from?
"I don't know what's happening,"
David admitted, his voice low.
I mean,
"You're not from here, right? You're from somewhere else?" She turned her gaze to him, her expression unreadable. "I am," she said simply.
From a place far away. A place where humans are seen as
"Inferior." David blinked. Inferior? He had heard stories, sci-fi movies, books, and shows all painted the picture of aliens visiting Earth, but never had he imagined it like this. Never had he thought it could feel so real, so immediate.
Yes, she continued, her voice quiet. My people, they do not see your kind as equals.
They think you are beneath them, less than them. They want to control everything. They believe in logic above all else, and emotions are considered weakness. She paused, her eyes darkening with something David couldn't place. "But I saw what you have here, what you are capable of."
David shifted uncomfortably on the couch. "I don't understand."
"What do you mean, what we have here?" She looked out the window, her gaze distant again. "Freedom, love, the ability to choose. These things are not understood where I come from. There is no room for feelings, for connections between people. But here I see it in everything. I see it in you." David sat back, trying to wrap his head around her words.
"So you left your people? You just
"Ran away." The alien girl turned back to him, her eyes locking with his. "Yes," she said. "I had no choice. I could not stay. I could not live a life that denied the very essence of what it means to be alive. I wanted to understand what it was to feel, to connect, and now I'm here." David's chest tightened as the weight of her words settled on him. He had always thought of aliens as distant, otherworldly creatures, something to be studied perhaps, or feared. But here she was, sitting on his couch, telling him that she was running from a life where there was no love, no freedom to choose who you were. It made him question everything. "So, what now?" he asked. "What are you gonna do?" She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. "I don't know," she whispered. "I am lost. I don't belong anywhere anymore." David's heart went out to her. "You can stay here," he said impulsively. "Until you figure things out. I mean, it's not much, but it's a place." Her gaze softened, and for the first time since he had met her, David saw a flicker of relief in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice almost a whisper. As they sat together in the dim light of the living room, the silence between them was different now. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful, almost comforting. David didn't know what the future held for them, but for now, he felt a deep sense of responsibility toward her. She was alone, lost, and she needed someone to help her. But deep down, he knew this wasn't just about helping a stranger. Something about her presence, the way she carried herself, the way she looked at him, stirred something inside him. It was as though, without saying a word, she had made him see the world in a new way, a way that was full of possibility, of connection, of things he had never fully understood before. He realized then that this strange encounter, this unexpected meeting, had changed him in ways he didn't fully comprehend yet. "I'm sorry," the alien girl said after a long pause. "I know this is all so strange."
I never meant to cause any trouble. David shook his head, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You haven't caused any trouble. You're not a burden. You're just here. And right now, that's all that matters."
The girl smiled faintly, and for a brief moment her eyes softened in a way that made David's heart skip a beat.
It wasn't just gratitude. There was something deeper in that look, something unspoken. It made David wonder if she, too, felt the pull between them. But before he could say anything more, she stood up slowly. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said quietly. "I don't know how long I'll be here, but I won't be a burden." David stood as well, shaking his head again. "You're not a burden. Stay as long as you need." She gave him one last look, a look full of emotions he couldn't quite interpret, before she turned and walked down the hallway. David watched her disappear into the room at the end of the hall, feeling a strange emptiness in her absence. He stood there for a while, processing everything that had happened in the last few hours. This had to be a dream. He had to be imagining it. But even as those thoughts swirled in his mind, he knew one thing for certain. His life had changed, and the world as he knew it would never be the same again. The following days passed in a blur for David. Each morning, he awoke to the quiet solitude of his home. But it was no longer the same. The presence of the alien girl, whose name he still hadn't asked for, had altered the space in a way he couldn't describe. Her quiet grace and gentle demeanor filled the house, yet there was an underlying tension in the air. As much as he wanted to help her, David was starting to feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him. She was not just a guest, not just a stranger in need. She was an enigma, a mystery he couldn't solve, and it made him feel unsettled. Every day she seemed to adapt more to Earth's rhythms. She watched the people who passed by on the streets, the way they interacted with one another, how they spoke. She tried to understand the intricacies of human life, the way emotions could dictate everything, from a simple gesture to a grand decision. But despite her attempts to fit in, there was always something that set her apart. It was in the way she observed everything with a kind of detached curiosity, as if she were studying humanity from a distance, trying to figure out how to be a part of it. One afternoon, as the sun poured through the living room window, David found himself sitting on the couch, his laptop open in front of him. He had been trying to work, but his mind kept drifting to the woman in the other room. He could hear the soft sound of her moving around, the faint shuffle of her footsteps on the wooden floor. He knew she was there, but he didn't know how to approach her. It wasn't like talking to someone from his world. Her presence was like a riddle that he couldn't solve, no matter how hard he tried. Suddenly, he heard her voice from the kitchen, soft and almost hesitant.
"David?" He closed his laptop and stood up, walking toward her.
Yeah? What's up? She was standing by the kitchen counter looking at a small device in her hand. It wasn't anything fancy. A simple phone, the kind most people used to call others or check their messages. But for her, it seemed foreign. She was holding it with both hands, turning it over in her fingers, inspecting it like she had never seen anything like it before. I don't understand this, she said, her brow furrowed. What is this for? David chuckled softly, walking over to her. It's a phone. People use it to talk to each other, send messages, take pictures, that kind of thing. She nodded slowly, but her expression remained puzzled. How does it work? How do you talk to someone far away? David took the phone from her hands, showing her how to unlock it and open the Contacts app. You just press this to call someone, or you can send them a text message. He demonstrated by sending a quick text to his friend, explaining the basic functions. It's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. She watched him intently, her eyes wide with interest. So, it's like speaking to someone, but not in person? Exactly, David said, handing the phone back to her.
You don't have to be in the same place to communicate. It's kind of amazing, really.
You can talk to someone across the world in seconds. She held the phone in her hands, staring at it, as if it were some sort of magic device. In my world, we do not have things like this. Everything is immediate.
You speak to someone in person, face to face. There is no waiting, no distance.
David paused, his mind wandering. It must be nice being able to have those kinds of connections. No need to wait, but I guess there's something special about the time we have. Even when we're apart, it makes you appreciate the moments when you're together. She met his gaze, a slight smile tugging at her lips. Yes, she agreed softly. I understand that now. The moment lingered in the air, and for a second David could have sworn that there was something deeper between them, something unspoken, but undeniable. It wasn't just the physical closeness, or the way they were standing next to each other. It was a connection, a bond, that felt almost as if it had always been there, waiting to be discovered. But David quickly pushed the thought away. He couldn't let himself get too involved, too attached. She wasn't from here. She was different, and the world she came from was light years away. Later that evening, as the sky darkened outside, the quiet of the house seemed to settle around them. David made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and a simple salad. The girl ate in silence, but her eyes never left him as he moved around the kitchen. There was something about the way she watched him, as if she were constantly trying to figure him out. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, it was just strange. She had lived a life so different from his, and yet here they were, sharing a meal.
Do you miss it?
David asked suddenly, breaking the silence. She looked up at him, her eyes curious.
What? Your home? David clarified. The place you came from.
Do you miss it? She set her fork down and thought for a moment. I miss parts of it, she said slowly. The knowledge, the structure, the certainty.
But I do not miss the way we were told to live. We were taught to suppress our emotions, to be logical above all else.
She paused, her voice quieter now. I was never happy there. David nodded, unsure of what to say. He had never been forced to live in such a strict environment, and he couldn't imagine a life where emotions were considered weaknesses. It sounded like a prison, a life without joy, without the freedom to love and feel.
Do you think you'll ever go back?
He asked. She shook her head. I do not think I can. I have seen too much of what it means to live with choice, with connection.
I cannot return to a place that denies those things. David didn't know what to say to that.
He wasn't sure if he was more surprised by the depth of her feelings, or by the fact that she was confiding in him so openly. It was like they had skipped all the small talk, all the getting to know each other. There was something raw and honest about her, something he found both terrifying and beautiful. The rest of the evening passed in a quiet haze. They talked about little things, how she had learned the basics of Earth customs, her fascination with the stars above them, and her wonder at the way people expressed themselves. But the more they talked, the more David felt a pull between them, a connection that he couldn't explain. It was like an invisible thread drawing him toward her, and every word she spoke seemed to make it stronger. Later that night, as they sat on the couch, she spoke again. This time, her voice was softer, more hesitant.
David, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to be here in this world.
I don't know how to be a part of it. David turned toward her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. It was the first time he had seen her like this, unshielded, uncertain. She was always so composed, so detached from everything around her. But now, she was just a person who was lost, who was looking for a way to belong.
You don't have to have all the answers right now, David said gently.
We don't have everything figured out either, but you'll figure it out.
You'll find your place. She nodded slowly, her gaze lingering on him. I hope so, she whispered. As the night deepened, they sat in silence, the only sound the soft hum of the house and the occasional creak of the wooden floor. For David, the weight of the world seemed to hang in the balance, and he couldn't shake the feeling that their story was only just beginning. Days passed, and the quiet between them settled into something more comfortable, more familiar. It wasn't the type of silence that felt heavy or awkward. No, it was peaceful, a kind of unspoken understanding that they both needed the space, but also the companionship. David had grown accustomed to having the alien girl around, though he still couldn't help but feel the weight of her presence. She was different, and everything about her life, her experiences, was beyond his comprehension. But somehow, he couldn't stop thinking about how she had become a part of his world. One morning, as David stepped out onto his porch to fetch the newspaper, he saw her sitting on the porch steps, her face turned toward the sky, her eyes lost in the vast expanse of blue. She had done this a few times now, sat outside and just stared up at the sky, her gaze always steady, always searching for something. He didn't interrupt her this time. He had learned that when she was like this, it was better to let her be. There was a quiet sadness in her eyes, something he couldn't understand, but he respected it. Instead, David took the time to watch her from the doorway, wondering just how much she missed the place she came from, the place that had rejected her, that had forced her to leave everything behind. She had told him before that she couldn't return to her world, that she had seen too much of the love, the connection, the freedom humans had, and it made her world feel empty, cold, and limiting. He had never really considered how lucky he was to be born on Earth, to live in a place where people had choices, where emotions were a part of everyday life. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how much he took it all for granted. The simple act of feeling, of connecting with another person. Was that really what made humans so special? Was that the thing that set them apart? David shook his head. He wasn't sure, but as he stood there, watching the alien girl on the porch, he felt a pang in his chest. She was here, on his planet, and she had no one, no place to call home. He couldn't imagine what it must feel like to be completely alone, to be caught between two worlds, neither of which would ever fully accept her. After a moment, she turned to him, her expression softening. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice quiet but steady. David stepped out onto the porch and sat next to her, his curiosity piqued.
About what? About what I've learned here,
she said, her gaze still focused on the sky.
About how people live.
How? There's so much here that I don't understand.
So much that I want to understand.
David nodded, watching the way her face lit up when she spoke. It was as if she had found something she could hold on to in this new world, something that made sense to her, even if only just a little bit.
What have you learned?
She paused for a moment, considering her words carefully.
I've learned that you don't always need answers. You don't need to know everything to feel what you feel.
Humans, you allow yourselves to feel everything. Joy, pain, love, loss. David's heart clenched. David's heart clenched. He hadn't really thought about it in those terms before. To him, emotions were just a part of life. Something everyone went through. Something everyone had to deal with. But to her, it seemed like a revelation. I think that's what makes you different from us, she continued, her voice softer now. Where I come from, emotions are seen as weaknesses. We are taught to control them, to suppress them. But here, I see people who live with their feelings, who love, who grieve, who laugh with their whole hearts. It's beautiful. David looked at her, feeling a deep sense of admiration. She had come from a place where emotion was not just frowned upon, but forbidden. And yet here she was, starting to understand what it meant to feel, to be alive. You're learning a lot, David said gently.
But it's not always easy.
I mean, living with emotions can be complicated. Sometimes they lead to mistakes, or hurt, or even regret. She nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful.
I understand that, but it doesn't change the fact that these emotions make people who they are.
Without them, life would be empty, wouldn't it? David smiled, the warmth of her words sinking in. Yeah, I think you're right. The quiet between them stretched again, but it was no longer uncomfortable. There was a new understanding between them, one that went beyond words. David didn't know what the future held for them, or if the alien girl would ever truly find a place where she felt at home. But for now, in this small corner of the world, she was safe, and that was all he could offer her. Over the next few days, things between them shifted. The girl, whom David had come to call Lyra, began to open up more. She shared stories about her world, about the rigid structure, the lack of freedom, the way people were forced to live without feeling, without connection. She told David about the city she had left behind, a place that seemed like a cold, sterile version of Earth, where everyone followed the same rules, the same expectations, with no room for individuality. David listened intently, his heart aching as she spoke. He couldn't imagine living in a place like that, a place where your every action was dictated by logic and duty, where emotions were seen as distractions. He could tell that Lyra had been a part of that world, a part of that system, and that it had never truly felt right to her. You're lucky, you know, she said one evening as they sat together on the porch, looking out over the landscape. You have a life filled with choices. You have the freedom to choose who you love, what you do, where you go. You have all of this. And yet, sometimes, you don't even realize how much of a gift it is. David looked at her, a pang of guilt rising in his chest. He had never considered the freedom he had to be a gift. It had always just been normal to him. I guess I never thought of it like that. You don't have to think about it, she said, her voice gentle. You live it every day. They sat in silence for a long time after that, each of them lost in their own thoughts. David couldn't help but wonder what Lyra's life would have been like if she had never come to Earth. What would she have become in her world? Would she have been able to change anything? To escape the confines of a life she had never wanted? And would she ever find her place here, on a planet so different from the one she had known? He didn't know the answers, but he was starting to realize that maybe he didn't have to. Maybe it wasn't about finding all the answers. Maybe it was enough to be here, together, in this moment. The future was uncertain, but for now, that was okay. As the days grew shorter and the seasons began to shift, David found himself growing closer to Lyra. They talked more, shared more. He found himself looking forward to her company, the quiet moments they spent together. And in those moments, he began to realize that in some strange, unexplainable way, she had become a part of his life, a part of his world. And that thought, more than anything, filled him with hope. Because no matter what the future held, no matter where Lyra came from or where she would go, he knew that their connection was something that no one could take away. As the sun set one evening, casting a golden glow over the landscape, David reached out and took her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch. He didn't need to say anything. In that simple act, everything that needed to be said was spoken. For the first time in a long while, David didn't feel so alone. And for Lyra, it was the first time in her life that she felt like she might truly belong.